There you go, is a bit of a change for you. One of the few videos I've done in recent days which I'm not sitting on the edge of the bed and acting like a silly little insomniac. Instead, I'm being an insomniac wearing clothes and standing up and working late, but I'm also taking a bit of time to just talk to you today, just because I enjoy it, I suppose. Something, there must be a reason, just you sit down there with your nice cup of tea with milk and sugar or whatever it is you've got. Nice sandwich, maybe a bit of a, have a little snack, have a little cup of tea, relax, we'll have a little chat. And this is like what I am and where I am and what I'm about, but also expressed through an example, so to speak, a story to make you think, and also talking a bit about divination as well. The divination bit I'll leave towards later on in the video, because at the moment I'm trying to explain to you more about spiritual similarities rather than differences. For those of you who aren't totally aware, I call myself a transcendental deist. This means that I seek spiritual experience, but I'm very doubting, very skeptical, and always asking questions because I want to try and find answers. And I know full well that answers cannot be found with any real ease. So therefore you've got to carry on asking more and more questions, because the more you know how little you know. That's just the way things are. I am also omnistic, which means that I perceive wisdom in all traditions, in all faiths, throughout the whole world, each and every single one of them, right? So I can't be pinned down to any one specific attitude to traditions or cultures, or indeed specific, culturally specific names for anything. In reality, these definitions have been essentially what I have always been. I have not been someone who felt comfortable being told what to do, what to think, and what to believe. I want to be able to find things out for myself. So that's how I need to be. I perceive that nearly all the various different traditions I'm aware of have become somehow part of the way in which I perceive the world. But I don't feel the need to accept all of the behaviours, speech patterns, cultural traits of any of these groups, because I want to think as an individual and work on myself as a person to attempt to become an even more well-adjusted, contributing member of society, looking after myself physically, mentally, and therefore also hypothetically spiritually. That just tells you a bit about me. Now, let's go on to the next part of today, in which I'm talking about an analogy, about similarities rather than differences. And I had a memory brought back of a family holiday, years and years and years ago. I was quite young. Me and my sister, my mum and my dad went out, I think it was to Cornwall, and we stayed in a fisherman's cottage. And it was a beautiful little cottage, it was. In the fact that it was run down. There were holes in the carpet and holes in the furniture, but it felt lived in and warm and friendly, and then I was a kid, so it was quite a nice adventure, alright? But there were even holes in the walls. And because this was like a Borderlands place, whoever it was who'd owned it just covered up the holes in the walls with pictures, stick-on pictures of various saints, alright? And it was quite weird, but also quite wonderful. And they were good pictures of saints with the flaming auras coming out of them. And during the night when I was there, and on reflection this could have been a spiritual thing, I don't know, I would always have dreams of this lady kneeling in prayer, rosary in her hand, a little sort of like altar set up, crucifix, statue of Mary. She's going through the beads, and I got the feeling she was praying intentions of like healing and help for someone. But in my vision, I always saw her with a powerful purple aura, flaming, just very similar to those saints' pictures. Obviously I was a young person, it could just mean I was like overtired because of the travel and I was like impressionable. But maybe it wasn't, but that's not the point. But that image of a person of faith kneeling in prayer with a bright, powerful aura, important point, did make me think. What was actually going on? I mean, if that was a real person, let's say that was, I don't know, a vision of something which genuinely happened at some point in that very same house before it was sold and turned into a place that was rented out for holidays. What was she doing? Now, we're talking about this from like an occultic point of view here, of course. And think about that scene, okay? And think about another scene. Let's say a pagan magician, right? And they're knelt or sat, maybe cross-legged, yoga position or something, maybe on a meditation stool, right? In front of their altar. And they're chanting and they're praying and doing this, that and the other. And they got the image of the god and the goddess there with candles, with incense. All right? And imagine their aura growing in brightness, because that's what the chanting and all the meditation does. It's the same thing. All right? What is true for one is true for the other. Now, what is it that separates these two people, these two hypothetical people? Well, apart from the fact they obviously hate each other because they're from different denominations and different faiths, and oh my God, that's so terrible. But what else? Maybe the cosmology that they'd accepted has maybe changed the way that the aura is operating. Maybe there's different stories, different words that they use. But the activity is still the same. All right? These are two people engaging in faith somehow. They are sat in a deliberate, concentrated manner. They've been doing the chanting and the praying or the rosary or whatever it is. The aura is getting brighter. There is hemispheric synchronization going on in the brain. It's the same thing. Precisely the same thing. Now, let's say either of them knew the secrets of divination, which is in reality entering into a meditative state of one type or another, usually with the attitude of receptiveness and openness. And then the perception is adjusted through the meditation and the concentration to direct perception in different directions. That's pretty much all divination really is. Just as simple as that, just as complicated. And if either the pagan magician or the Catholic were to understand that, they could actually be doing stuff to gain visions. So therefore, maybe the only real difference is in terms of how perception and intention and attention is changed during prayer and meditation. So therefore, maybe instead of arguing about different traditions and different names for different traditions, surely it would be better if these two hypothetical people were to get together and talk about the experience in prayer and meditation for the purposes of advancing each other's understanding of how to do the divinatory practice properly. Alright? I believe that those people are the same. There is a sense of similarity there. There is a sense that there is nothing to separate these two people. So maybe the Celtic, the Catholic and the pagan should get together, and they should talk not about which tradition is better, because that is just a load of political bollocks anyway, a load of cult bollocks anyway, and to focus on that which is important. What is actually happening during the prayerful state? What is actually happening? What different methods of initiating the prayerful state operate to create that change better for that individual? What state was their body and mind in at the time? How were they attempting? How could they try and describe, using the best skills of articulation that they can, about something which is difficult to describe? Namely, the differences in the states of mind in meditation and prayer. Surely, if one is more magically inclined, that is what you should be talking about. That is what you should be studying. That is what you should be thinking about. Not whether, your pentagram should be yellow or red. not whether the candles should be of different hues, not necessarily even focusing too much on the words which are used. I mean, think about it in paganism. They use the words perfect love and perfect trust rather a lot, don't they? But so people forget, right, that if you're doing magic, and the definition of magic in this particular case is the manipulation of the energy field and mediumship, then surely that's what we need to be thinking about and focusing on. What the changes are in the energy fields, how are they created? I mean, I'm sure there can be plenty of aesthetic discussions as to the use of the words in the right intonation, pronunciation, the use of words to create the right psychological environment to make it easier to snap into various different states of mind. Alright, and in that respect, yes, there may be choosing different deity names and the rest of it would be more useful. But that's an aesthetic discussion which can distract you away from the actual discussion of what's really going on. The discussion about the energy field. The discussion about changes of states of consciousness. The discussion about why you are using a certain art style for various things. One would assume that different art styles would have a different effect upon your consciousness, wouldn't it? Let me illustrate that very quickly. Oops, if I move over here. Let's demonstrate this briefly with two different tarot decks. I'm providing the analogy today of a Catholic and a pagan. So the imagery of Catholicism is different to the imagery of paganism. Just as the imagery of the Angel Tarot by Travis McHenry, which I'd recommend everyone have a look at because it's rather good, because it's the Enochian one, right? As opposed to the Folklore Oracle. The art styles themselves would therefore be something that would resonate with your consciousness somehow. So if I was doing something specifically for pagan purposes, I would probably be more inclined to use traditional pagan tools, or things which would look that way. Because if I create a different feeling, a different mood, alright, then I am creating, one would assume, not just a different mood, and not just a different feeling, but having an effect to a certain degree upon my energy field, which is in part connected to my consciousness. And then through meditating upon the energy field itself, changing its properties. As you shift your mood, as you shift your state of consciousness in your meditation, your energy field can change. As you change the way in which you visualize its shape, its form, its structure, that can also have an effect. You see where I'm coming from here? The aesthetic discussion is part of it, but the energetic discussion is more real and has more weight to it, and is therefore much more complicated. For that reason, I have mentioned the author of Barbara Ann Brennan before, and I'll mention her again because her illustrations of the aura are accurate, taking into account a lot of my visions that I've had myself. So it's worthwhile reading broad and thinking outside the box. If your interest is magic, namely the results of or the attempt to create an anomalous experience, using meditation, visualization, ritual, and other theological activities. Can you see where I'm coming from there? Where is your focus? Is it on your denomination, or is it on magic? Alright? Is it on the politics of your faith, or is it on the energy field's interaction with the entire universe? Which is obviously a very complicated thing to discuss. And then it's a question of what specific personal experiences could hypothetically illustrate other points as to how the whole thing seems to, in inverted commas, work. For this reason, I hope you can understand that the discussion of magic and witchcraft must therefore be much more complicated and much more nuanced than the way it is actually in pagan and witchcraft groups at the moment. And certainly the Christians need to do a lot of work, because Christianity is still all about the denial of the search for spiritual experience, despite the fact that one of their key characters in the history and mythology of Christianity, namely Enoch, was one of the greatest ascension masters of his time, and that's why he became such an important figure in the Bible, as well as being an important figure in today's contemporary society, as I do get plenty of clients who call me and they say they're learning about Enoch and they're trying to follow the path of Enoch, which is essentially just ascension meditation. So my discussion with you could be, there's ways to assist to try and make that state of mind more likely, and that's the body scan meditation, the opening of the chakras, and ascension. And then once that's been done for a while, things can happen. The ascension meditation does seem to open you up to spirit, and you may get spiritual visions and spiritual dreams when you're in bed. Very weird ones at times, okay? So you can miss out the ascension meditation and just operate on the bodily level. Maybe that's more the kind of like mid-level. That's kind of like more, for forms of psychic reading, perhaps. And also the sending of energy on the lower levels. But it's only through raising up to the higher levels that you can start to perceive or have the occasional glimpse of, that's a more realistic phrase, whatever the higher reality is. And there are entity experiences you can have in those states as well, which I've also had one or two of. More than that, actually. So, my point here is that as far as I'm concerned, I personally cannot be constrained to specific individual traditions from my omnistic point of view. My point is also that complexity and nuance needs to be part of all forms of spiritualistic religious debate and discussion. And that we're dealing with something which is there for all. And people of every denomination in the world has experienced it at some point. Not every person, but every person there'll be people in all denominations which will have had something weird happening. So, perform your contemplative traditions. Enjoy them. But realize that there's something real there, and that thing which is real has importance because it is real. But we need to have a complex and rational approach. And if we don't, we are essentially deluding others, as well as ourselves. I mean, the discussion you have with yourself about all this stuff is going to shape your opinions quite drastically, and is also going to shape your abilities with the passage of time if you draw any real hard and fast conclusion right now. Okay? Experiment and put things to the test like you're in Mythbusters. Bye for now.